Hello and welcome to Worst Quality Crab, a podcast of Asian American stories and recipes from best quality hearts. I am your host, Frisia Lee. As always, joining me is my husband and producer, Sam.
Hello.
Our guest this week is Vincent Beck. He's a half Japanese creative based in the Bay Area with a passion for food and street photography. Hi, Vincent. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Very good. We're really glad to be here. Also, no one can see this at home, but I really like your Kona Brewing hat.
Thanks. Yeah, I picked it up last year from a previous Hawaii trip.
Nice. So let's just jump right in. Vincent, what dish are you bringing us today? Where were you eating this? Who is making it for you? What about it is so special? Tell us all the things.
Yeah, definitely. Before coming to the show, I had a really tough time trying to find like the one dish that stuck with me throughout my childhood and growing up. But I had like this like quick phone call with my mom, and this was the dish that came up. So the dish I brought for you today is called Iritamago, or fluffy eggs. It's basically scrambled eggs on top of rice with some seaweed. But with the way my mom would make it would have sugar and some soy sauce in it. And yeah, it's a super simple dish, but it was the one thing that my mom would make all the time for like lunch or like a quick dinner or something like that. And funny enough, like the recipe she gave me wasn't the recipe she cooked with like originally. But yeah, I love this dish. I think it's this dish that kind of like introduced me into like the world of cooking. I can't make it like my mom made it, but I still try. I attempt it.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially not if she gave you like some other recipe.
Yeah.
That was like close. Like it, I mean, moms do that. That sounds like a very mom thing. And also the mom in me is like, oh, she gave you adjacent. So like you always have to get the real thing from her.
Yeah, it kind of messed with like my memory of it. I was filling out your questionnaire and there's like the little recipe section. I was like, okay, let me look at what my mom sent. And it was like mirin, basically like cooking wine, like Japanese cooking wine, right? And I just do not remember that being in the dish. When you would make the scrambled egg portion, it was sugar, a little dash of milk, and then like some soy sauce. And that was it.
So how do you make it today? Do you follow the recipe she gave you, or do you like go off memory and taste?
I just go off of memory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Solid.
I adjusted it before I submitted the recipe. I was just like, this doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Do you think she like kind of simplified it when you were a kid to adjust for your taste or something like that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think this particular dish is so memorable because it is connected to the way my grandma would make this thing called tamagoyaki, which roughly translates to like cooked eggs. But in Japan, they would cook kind of like this folded egg dish in like a square pan. It looks really easy when you see it on like social media, but it's like, to me, it's like really hard to do. Like working with eggs is like so difficult. But anyways, my grandma would make this like sweet and sour tamagoyaki dish, and Iritamago, like this recipe for my mom, was kind of like derived from that. And I have no memory of this, but I guess I just didn't like eating this dish like that my grandma made. Maybe it was like too salty or too sour, right? Yeah.
I do think eggs are surprisingly hard to work with sometimes, and they look really easy when other people do it, and then I do it, and they're not. So I'll just leave that there. Also, if anybody's listening and wants to give me a lot of egg tips, they're welcome. I will accept them. That aside,
I mean, it's
the
true.
difficulty
it's
of
true.
eggs. It is true, right? It's like why in French cooking, like an omelet is the hardest thing to perfect or whatever. Anyway, I think what also comes up for me, just the idea of like cooking eggs a couple of different ways and then eating them with rice is like, you're not the first person to bring eggs and something as their comfort meal. And I think that there's something so kind of like universally wholesome about that everyone is like some eggs and a carb and we are good to go. But in your case, I guess like why was your mom making this so often for you? Was it something that like you were a picky eater, or it was just an easy thing to do, or you just really liked it? You know, like I think a lot of kids, like for our kids, their go-to meals are like mac and cheese or spaghetti and meatballs or whatever. And actually, one of them doesn't like eggs at all. So I'm curious for you, like, what was so special about eating eggs kind of often?
As a kid growing up, like I said, I didn't enjoy those like sour or salty flavors from, whatever my grandma would make. But, having that kind of stubborn palate, my mom figured like, hey, I'll put some sugar in in these eggs and hopefully he'll eat something. But, thinking about it like years later, I'm 30 now. So, and I haven't said this yet, but I'm half Japanese. So growing up away from Japan, away from my culture and stuff, I think that was a way for my mom to like, even with like this dish, like here's something from home that you can enjoy. Not only just with that dish, it was like so many others, right? I think that was like her way of sharing a part of my culture each and every day. A lot of the food that we ate, it wasn't, Happy Meals and like Applebee's or whatever, it was a lot of home cooking,
Mm-hmm.
enjoying that together as a family.
So your mom grew up in Japan.
Yeah, she's from there. Mm-hmm.
And you were born.
I was born in Japan as well. Yeah.
Okay.
On a military base.
And then you moved to the US around what age?
I'd say around like 3 or 4, right about the time I started preschool.
Okay. Oh, so right around like formative palate / picky eating, difficult years.
when I gained consciousness
Yeah.
as a human being. Yeah.
What was that like for you? Do you remember to move here as a little kid and sort of whatever that culture shock may or may not have been?
The way I remember it just like wasn't a huge deal to me, and not in like the negative sense, right? Like I was a Navy brat, so my dad was in the Navy, and that would mean we would have to move every 3 years, right? Weirdly enough, like me being biracial wasn't an issue or like a thing that I thought about growing up. I do now, like years later. It's, I don't know why, but that's just the way it was. But thinking back, right, I want to say a lot of like what I think of as Japanese culture or like whatever I learned was like kept within the walls of our house. But like when I went out to school or like played baseball or whatever, my Japanese side didn't come out there. It was like, you're an American.
Mm-hmm.
You're half white,
Yeah.
It's out there. But yeah, weirdly enough, it didn't come up really when I was growing up.
Where were you growing up, if I may?
So that's like a tough question to answer because I moved every 3 years, so I don't really have a hometown.
Mm-hmm. I guess I ask because I'm curious. Like, I grew up here in San Francisco, and so for me to be like half Asian is like not a big deal. Although I did think about it as a kid a lot. We could talk about that in a whole other conversation. But I guess I'm curious, like, in what places did it not feel like an issue to you, and what's that like?
No, yeah,
because I did think about it so much.
So, like moving around. So I've lived in Washington State, moved to California to Ridgecrest, which is like in the middle of nowhere. Past the Central Valley. If you know where that is.
Shout out Ridgecrest.
That's not near a body of water.
It's not near anything.
The inland navy.
Yeah. So after that, I lived in Japan for a year, and that was like cut short pretty quickly. Moved back to Washington State, and then after that, we settled in Hanford, California, which is like an hour south of Fresno, if y'all know where that is.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So we spent like 7 years there before I went off to college in Cowtown. But yeah, like throughout that time, like being half Japanese, it wasn't something that anyone brought up other than like, oh, do you have Pokemon cards? Or like, have you watched this anime or something? Or,
Yeah.
all the fun stuff. But it didn't really come up until like going to college.
What was your mom packing you for lunch?
It was a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, probably like a bag of chips.
Okay.
American food.
Yeah, so like classic Americana lunches.
Yeah.
Not like onigiri or any sort of rice-based anything.
Yeah. If it was like onigiri or anything like that, I'd be eating that at home. But going to school, it was America Core lunch.
America Core.
With like an apple or
Yeah.
or whatever.
What was that like for you to just eat Japanese food at home? Or did you even think anything of it at all?
To be real, like I didn't really think about it too hard, but I'm grateful for those moments when my dad was home from like deployment or anything like that. Eating Japanese food in our house, it was always like a time for us to get together and just like enjoy each other's company. It had like this bonding like role, I think, for our family because my dad was gone for so long or would be gone for so long. Which is crazy to think about because my dad is white. He's from like the Midwest, and you wouldn't think that, but it was like completely accepted. And
So it sounds like your mom was cooking Japanese for you as a family, and your dad was very much into it.
yeah,
That's awesome. You said you didn't really think about it as a kid, but you think about these things now. What do you think of them now?
her making all those dishes was like a means to, I think, provide comfort to me during like the chaos of moving every 3 years. At the time, I think I just like dealt with it. I don't know how I did. Like, I would have to change schools, have to make new friends, like be in this completely new environment. But the food that my mom made kind of provided that comfort to make me think of, the good times that we'd have, like visiting home, which we would do like every year, like during the holidays. That's really kind of like the role it had in my life. And I mean, I don't know this for sure, but that might have been her way of dealing with that culture shock or like coming to a new place after she married my dad. And I think her first time in America was like moving to like Tennessee,
Wow.
which is like a far cry from like Yokohama or whatever city in Japan, right? So
Do you consider Japan your home? Like you moved around a lot and there's not like one central location.
yeah, it's a tough question to answer. I think it's really kind of like this, like a second home or like a place I can go back to. Since I've moved around so much, I can't really like positively, confirm like, yes, this is where I'm from. But I can say whenever I like visit Japan and go back, I get this like sense of relief, I guess, when I like hop on a train or like I'm on like the highway out of Haneda. I just like kind of like take this like nice deep breath and I'm like, oh, this isn't home, but it is. Like I feel I can just like immerse myself and kind of get lost in some cheesy way, not have to think about what I look like. And I can just kind of like blend in with the city and just kind of live and enjoy it. And obviously like Tokyo is like an amazing city, but to me it's more than that. And those are my like feelings around like a hometown.
That's really nice. I mean, again, like I grew up here and I've lived here most of my life and I will probably die here. And so Sam and I dated long distance for a long time and I used to go to New York a few times a year. And that was kind of the other place where like I felt comfortable and I knew my way around and it felt like easy and natural. And I was back there recently and it felt really different. And I was like, oh no, I don't feel that way anymore. Like it's changed and I've changed. And maybe like that part of my life is gone and like that relationship in New York is gone. But for you, it sounds like Japan is sort of the place for homecoming outside of like being with your actual parents. And I'm going to guess that that's not going to change. And that's actually only going to get deeper, not to like, foreshadow your future or whatever.
Tee it up.
Yeah.
So I went to Japan last like February, March, and that was the first time I'd been back home in the last like 12 years. I went through college, did that whole thing, worked at a company for like 6 years in Santa Barbara. And in that entire time, I hadn't gone back to visit family. I think since then, it's just been like my mission to like go back. One Japan trip ends, I'm like thinking about the next one. I don't know what it is. Maybe like I feel like I'm running out of time or something like, but.
Oh, you're very young. I'm just going to say, I love all of you 30-year-olds and 29-year-olds that are like, oh, I'm going to be 30. I just turned 30. And your feelings are very valid. Feel however you want. But also to be 30 again.
I just think it's really funny that like you say that you don't have an official hometown, but whenever you talk about going back to Japan, like it's very casual, like I'm going back home.
Yeah, definitely. But I guess like hometown in the sense of like I grew up in this small town and like I went from preschool to
Yeah.
high school,
Mhm.
for the last 18 years of my life, that kind of
Hey, it's okay to not claim a small town outside of Fresno. We get it.
thing.
I wouldn't want to claim that either. As well, you shouldn't. That is culturally like, I don't even know what cow culture is.
Cow culture.
Sorry, Hanford listeners, Fresno friends.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. So I guess I'm curious. You're 30. You really want to go to Japan again all of the time. You live in the Bay now. You're cooking for yourself. What else are you cooking? Like, how else are you eating these days?
And also, like, are you making this fluffy egg for yourself very often nowadays?
Is it still a staple?
When I've ran out of all the ideas, I'll probably default to fluffy eggs. But I just can't do it like my mom does. Like, I don't know, like every time I've gone home, she'll make us like that or just like scrambled eggs for breakfast. And I just like, she makes them in a way where they're just so good and so like, they're like perfect. I like can't do it. There's like another dish called omurice in Japan or omelette rice. And I try to do kind of like that messy egg, like folded pouch thing. And then you cut it on the top and it's just like amazing. Can't do it. I practice it all the time. Can't. It's impossible. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I'll default to that. But I try to like run through the whole gamut of different dishes, like gyudon, which is like a sweet, savory kind of like beef bowl dish. Cold soba, that's like extremely simple to make, but it's just so good. If you haven't ever made cold soba, like definitely try it. Get like really good Japanese noodles and like make your own little dipping sauce soup. Like it's incredible. I think the one thing that my girlfriend and I make a lot these days is like tonkatsu. There are a lot of steps to that, and it can kind of get messy, but it's super good. Yeah, I mean, I can list off like all the dishes, but it's really something like I've been trying to do more and more. I'm not like a professional cook, but it's hard to explain. But it's like kind of following in the footsteps of my mom, like doing, and I'll get these recipes from my mom as well. It's like, hey, like what do you recommend, or how do you make this like your way? But there's something to that where I'm kind of like following the same movements that I remember like my grandma or mom when they would make like miso soup or something. One, it's comforting, but it's also kind of like inspiring to like kind of envelop the culture or like have the culture kind of surround or envelop me and kind of like take over and be a part of that. Even though I'm half Japanese, I can like feel more Japanese in the moment, which I try to strive for these days.
Yeah. That's quite the switch from Americana lunchcore.
Yeah.
Like, what has that transition been like for you to kind of lean more into the Japanese side of cooking and culture?
Yeah, there was kind of like a good stretch of time when I started college where unknowingly just kind of repressed that side of me for years and years and years, especially into my early career. For whatever reason, I didn't really want to think about it. I didn't want to be different at like the college that I was attending. And I didn't want to like reach out to like one of those like student groups to like connect with other like Japanese students or anything like that, which I actually like regret since, I guess, after talking with another friend of mine who went to one of those groups. But for whatever reason, it just wasn't top of mind for me. And I will say like I think I was like a sophomore or junior at the time, super busy with classes, all the stuff that comes with being a college student. Like, my mom just like calls me up like, hey, like your grandma just passed. And that was that. So, and I couldn't really have time to grieve about it. I didn't even visit. Like I said, like the first time since then was like last year around February. And I think after that, like kind of going through that where this like weird indifference to kind of like what my family went through, it's been more of like a mission. Like I need to make up for that lost time.
Mm.
I'm hell-bent on like learning the language, interacting with my family more and more, since.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's very real. And I think you're not alone in that, right? Like, I think we've had a number of guests on this show and also just like people in our lives and things that I morbidly think about more often than I should, maybe, about what will happen when people in our lives start to pass and what will that mean for not just our relationship to them and those specific people, but like how does that impact as a family or on our kids, like what that does to their sense of culture and sense of self and, how they see themselves and their position in the world based, and that sounds really big. Like, how do you see yourself in the world? But these things matter and they add up. And yes, a downer, but not a downer and like not singular to you again.
Mhm.
And they're real things. It's a real thing to think and act on like, what if I am running out of time? And like how do you go about either making up that time or spending it wisely? And for you, it sounds like spending it wisely is really getting in touch with your mom's side through cooking and through food.
Yeah. I think this kind of came from like, spending all our time indoors during the pandemic and just kind of, sitting with your thoughts, I guess. But also, I think the main thing was just kind of, I don't even remember when, but I just like looked at my parents and they were just like, oh, they're 60 now. Like, oh shit, you guys aren't supposed to do that. You're not supposed to, you're not supposed to age, and I mean, yeah, I'm 30 and I guess maybe it's kind of weird that I think about kind of like mortality and like how much limited time we have here. But I think after that, it's like a scary thought not putting in the effort to, connect with that part of me.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't try, like, as like a half Japanese person, what does that say about me?
What does no, I'm just kidding. Okay, this is total tangent. But when you were naming off things, I was like, I'd order all of those. Have. Like, yes, I will go and I can get like fresh soba. It was like a go-to order of mine as a kid when we would go out to eat Japanese. But there's something about Japanese food that like I just am so intimidated by trying to take it on. And actually, now that I'm saying this, I think I'm intimidated by taking on all foods because I can't think of one where I'm like, I would do that, except for like Italian because pasta.
I'm totally the same. Like, I'll see like cooking mashups on Instagram or something. I'm like, ooh, I can try that. I could totally do that. But then, like, at the end of the day, I'm just like, oh, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't do any of this. I'm useless.
Yes, that. But like that feels especially true of Japanese food. So to all that to say, I'm very impressed by you. Like extra layer, next level impressed that you're taking it on, even though it is your culture. So I get that. But let me just still be impressed by you because I cannot imagine trying to make a tonkatsu and like have it be good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's some of the dishes can be like super complex, as complex as you can make it. But like culturally in Japan, I feel like there's this weird shift towards like everything being like easier and easier to make. So there's a lot of like prepackaged like stuff you can buy over there from like a konbini or like a grocery store, and I think we're like shifting away from kind of like that handmade like home cooked like dish, which kind of worries me with like the amount of like prepackaged crap you can buy over there. I mean, I guess it's like the Trader Joe's effect. I feel like there's a lot of just like, here's your like frozen tikka masala, go for it. Like just microwave that.
Yeah.
It's more common nowadays in Japan.
I just thought about the large box of shrimp tempura that we buy at Costco for our kids.
Yeah. But I mean, it's also convenience, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's funny because that box, like, when I eat it, it's like, it's not quite right. But it's so easy to just put it in the air fryer.
Yeah.
And the whole box is like the price of one restaurant order.
Yeah. It's scary.
I guess, yeah, that's true.
Scary in both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You said you're cooking this with your girlfriend. Is she Asian?
Yes, she's Chinese.
Okay. What's that like? I guess I'm just getting very curious about like
Yeah.
being multi-Asian in like the same kind of cooking spaces.
It's been like eye-opening, and I guess I'm generally a huge enjoyer of food. Like I'm not afraid to try anything, and being with her family, I've been introduced to so much more like Kanto dishes because like living in Santa Barbara and going to college, you're just introduced to like one style of Chinese cooking, which is Mandarin or Szechuan style, or
Did not know that about Santa Barbara. Good to know.
there isn't a lot of good Asian food in Santa
Right.
Barbara.
That's kind of what I figured.
There's some good noodle spots, but that's like a whole different conversation. But it's like that family style, like here's your carbs and then here's a bunch of meat dishes. Here's your mapo tofu, that kind of thing. But moving here 2 years ago, I've just been like exploring like a completely new cuisine. And her family's from Vietnam as well. So there's like kind of like that mixture of, or not mixture, but there's like more variety, right? And it's all so good. I like Oakland Chinatown is just incredible. And Little Saigon too. There's so much good stuff out there.
Okay, I didn't know that you moved here 2 years ago. So now I just have to ask a lot of questions about, have you been to Japantown?
SF's Japantown?
Yes.
A couple times in my first few months here.
What did you think? This is all leading up to me asking if you've had coffee crunch cake, which I know is not a Japanese specific dish. It's Japantown specific.
Japantown's great. But I only needed to go like a couple times and then I don't need to go again.
Oh yeah, fair. Okay.
It's fine. Not to like shit on like Japantown, but
No.
you know.
I mean, I guess I ask because I think, Chinatowns are a lot more common in more places. And I don't know that Japantowns are as common just in the country for a variety of reasons related to immigration and politics.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just curious, like, what that was like for you, having grown up in a lot of different places, especially like small towns, to have like a Japantown here.
Yeah.
Or if it was special at all, or it's too far, or whatever.
I think for me, like, as opposed to like my girlfriend who could move to like LA and she'd have like a bunch of different like hubs to go to experience her culture in that like she would here. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's like, we have SF Japantown and there's like a Japantown in LA, but it's not the same thing. Like, I don't meet that many Japanese people in my day-to-day life. It's so rare. I only knew 3 Japanese people back in Santa Barbara, and I like barely know any in the Bay Area. I'm working on it, but it's tough. I don't know if that's like sad in any way, but that's just like the experience. At least for me, it's pretty tough.
We can change that. We can facilitate some introductions.
Definitely.
That's interesting. I guess, I was curious because if you don't know a lot of Japanese people here, then I guess I was just wondering, like, for someone who does consider Japan a type of home, and also has not been around a lot of Japanese people here, like what that relationship to Japantown is like. If it's like there are more Japanese people here, yay, or like this is not like Japan at all, boo. Not that those are the only 2 binary feelings to have about Japantown, but just that intersection, I guess.
Yeah, it's to me, it's more of like, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like, oh, this is like a place that's dressed up like things that you would find in Japan, but it's not. Yeah. Like, I forgot, what's the ramen restaurant in there called? Is it Marufuku or something?
Yes.
Okay. Like, I'll say, like, after eating ramen in Japan, like, nothing compares. I don't know if it's upsetting, but it's just like, I don't. I've eaten at Marufuku a couple times, but I don't need to go back. But it's not like disappointment. Like, I get why Japantown like exists, but it's not like the true experience.
Sure.
I guess.
Fair.
That's fair.
But the bookstore is great. Go there. It's great.
The bookstore is great.
Yeah.
I am going to need you to go back so that you can try coffee crunch cake, though. Just going to say that.
It's called Yasukochi's Sweet Stop. It's like in the corner of a grocery store.
It is actually a little tiny bakery counter inside of a small grocery store that's like right off of the Buchanan Plaza. And they've been there for, I want to say, like 50 years. They're the originators of this cake, which is actually kind of like a San Francisco only thing, too.
Oh,
It's just this like really fluffy white cake with whipped cream and like pieces of like coffee toffee, basically, like a crunchy coffee
yeah.
candy.
Ooh,
And it's excellent.
that sounds awesome.
Anyway, we'll point you towards it. This is really just my excuse to talk about coffee crunch cake. It's my favorite cake of all time, I think. So, any excuse. Not sponsored by Yasukoji's Sweet Stop, but please get at us someday.
One day.
Yeah. All right, Vincent, what else do you want to talk about? You had mentioned a little bit before we were prepping for this show about social media and how that makes food deceptively easy. Please speak on that.
Yeah. I was a little cautious bringing this topic up. Like, like after I hit submit, I was just like, am I waffling on or just like complaining like I usually do? But I just figured I'd bring it up because I've actually talked to my girlfriend about this because we always like look at recipes and stuff online. But recently, since tourism is just absolutely booming and exploding in Japan right now, like there's like a weird gimmickiness to like a lot of food in Japan right now. And it's completely different to what I think would be like the most authentic experience of eating whatever over there. Like enjoying ramen, getting sweets from a bakery, or going to like a soba shop or something. I feel like the gimmickiness about this stuff, like Totoro cream puffs or like the big, like thick pancakes that you can get at these shops, which I've never seen before ever in my life, but they're just all over the place now. I feel like it kind of takes away it, like it doesn't feel authentic to me. And I understand a lot of all these businesses are like probably thriving in Japan and they're owned by Japanese people and everything, and that's pretty good. But to me, it kind of like takes away from like the authenticity of actual Japanese cuisine. Yeah.
Why did you feel like that was a hot take and you were afraid to share it? What's the fear?
I guess the fear is like, oh, you're just like some boomer complaining about social media in general.
Oh, so you just don't want to sound like a social media curmudgeon?
Yeah.
At 30, you're like, back in my day,
Yeah.
pancakes were flat.
Yeah. I have a bunch of friends who've like visited like recently and they're like, I can't wait to check out like the Totoro cream puffs and like and things like that. And I'm just like, why? What? Like,
yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. And it is the like, I mean, I think it's a few things. I've actually never really thought about this. So this is all just coming out as it comes. Bear with me.
Yeah.
It's a few things, right? Like it's that there is this like social media craving for novelty and like making something Instagrammable or like postable or whatever. And also I think there's something around the like kawaii effect of like everything is cute in Japan, and so like let's lean into that. And the idea that that's maybe sort of like a post-war infantilism because of many factors.
Yeah.
Thank you, Murakami exhibit for that one. But also just like a Western fascination with everything Japanese and it being both like technologically advanced, even if that's like in a food sense of making something Totoro shape, or, you know, then like the intersection of that and this like cuteness. And then people just leading into it and being like, people are going to pay a lot of money for this. And also we can put a stick of butter on a pancake and charge more money for it. That one, the algorithm fed me that one. It was a flat pancake, but a whole stick of butter.
I had a buddy who sent me this like post of this restaurant called like American Shop in like Tokyo. It's literally called like American Shop or like American Sandwich or something. But they made like whole loaf of bread sized egg salad sandwiches. Right? They use like a whole loaf of like, that's insane from a business standpoint. This is real, by the way. You can look it up.
I mean, is there also like a novelty for Japanese people, like just making outrageous American food in Japan?
I don't know, but that'd be a fun thing to research.
The hot take, but I think that there is a like certain novelty to many cultures about trying to make an American something and like their take on what Americans like and want and just how ridiculous we are. And sometimes they're not wrong.
Yeah, a callback to America Core. Like, it's a funny concept for many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it's like a pizza with a burger on top and also spaghetti. And what do you wish people were eating or seeing when they went to Japan if it's not a 5-inch pancake? Which I'm not gonna lie, I want to eat a 5-inch pancake because I love pancakes.
Yeah, they look amazing.
They look great. So if I were to go to Japan, for our listeners who are going to Japan, what do you recommend?
Let's see. I can't really like recommend like specific places.
Sure. But generally, like what's the vibe?
I'd say like don't just stick to like the major Tokyo districts like Shibuya, Shinjuku, Akihabara. I mean, if you do, just walk around, like literally just walk around and find these little hole in the wall places where you could like go to a little vending machine, get a ticket and get some food, right? Don't go to overly high places or just like get out of Tokyo. Go to Yokohama, like south of the city. Whenever I go back, like I'm not a tourist and I just find it weird that people are just so fixated on like, we have to be in Tokyo or we have to be in Kyoto. They offer like different things, obviously, but there's like a lot that Japan can offer outside of those made hubs. And just take a train out. It's like not that far. It's not that hard to do either. I would recommend going to Yokohama or like going towards, if I remember correctly, if like you're going the Kamakura direction, like just go all the way south and see what you can find out there. It's not like exactly countryside Japan, but it's more like just small town Japan. It's super quiet, but there's a lot of like great stuff out there. That's what I'd recommend.
It's interesting that you like small towns in Japan, but not so much small towns here.
Oh, they're so nice. They're so nice and quiet. They're so calm.
This has been really interesting, Vincent. I think I have learned a lot about you. I think you've given me some things to think about around food and identity and maybe a whole separate podcast about the half Asian experience. We'll talk offline about that maybe.
Yeah.
But so thank you for being here. It's been really nice.
Thank you for having me.
If people would like to find you online, where can they find you or your work?
Yeah, so these days I'm kind of focusing on my street photography. So you can find me on Instagram at meronpan.jpg. That's MERONPAN.jpg. And you can just find my stuff there.
Awesome. And for listeners at home, we will get up a recipe for Iritamago, and we're going to use the one that Vincent has provided that may or may not be what his mom actually uses. But if you make this at home, you won't have any idea. So just pretend that this is the one his mom makes and it is perfect and you are making it perfect, even if eggs are hard, because eggs can be hard and that's okay. That was for me more than anything. Eggs are hard. But thank you again. This has been awesome. Listeners at home, thank you for coming along on this ride with us. Find us at worstqualitycrab.com. You can find us on Instagram at worstqualitycrab. And if you want to email us for any reason, worstqualitycrabpod@gmail.com. And we will talk to everyone next time. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.